The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Chattin with Jocelyn. It is so good to have you here this afternoon. We have two very special guests, so you will not be have to listen to my typical opening rants. So we're going to jump in because time is limited. These two guests are absolutely phenomenal. I think you're going to be educated. And I think your eyes are going to be wide open when you find out what's been going on and what needs to happen and how we're going to get some clean energy and what is going on beyond solar panels and electric batteries. Just saying. So we have today Steve.
Hi, Jocelyn.
Let me just get your name correct. Stephen Curtis.
Correct.
And I have Tom, and I don't have your last name, Tom.
Dolan.
Dolan. And you are both here to speak to us about nuclear energy.
Correct.
Yes.
What happens to the leftover fuel cells? What is that about? What is the truth? What is not the truth? What should we be doing? What is truly the technology that we have now? So who would like to start?
I'll start. Let me
Okay,
tell you the basics of what we're trying to do. And we're the only two working on this in the whole country. And we're
love it.
hoping that New Hampshire can be the one that takes advantage of this. Turns out that you can get a lot of energy out of fuel that's already been used in a reactor, that's already been taken out. A lot of people call it nuclear waste. We call it slightly used nuclear fuel. So if you use a different technique in a reactor, a different type of reactor, you can use all of the energy. Right now, they only use about 1% of the energy that's possible. A fast reactor.
Wait. Say that again. They only use 1%?
Yeah. There's a reason for that.
Okay.
Look how much we make out of what that 1%. We get 20% of our power in this country.
Okay.
And 55% of the clean power in this country right now.
Okay.
But if we use this next technique, we can get the rest of the energy out. 100 times the energy we can get out of this.
So we'll get more energy using the spent cells that really have a lot of stuff in them.
Yeah.
You have a new technology to use that. And let me guess that we are no longer trying to get rid of these fuel cells that have stuff in them.
Everybody else is. We
I
don't
break it
recommend
down,
that. Okay. We don't recommend that. We recommend we use it to make this energy, and it's really an old technology that's being brought back. The original nuclear power reactor was going to be a fast reactor, and the nuclear Navy decided to choose a light water reactor. So that's the way the rest of the community went. It was a light water reactor like the ones we use today.
So the powers that be know that this technology has existed in the past. It's been approved in the past. So we're just bringing it back. So like new math, we're going to have new nuclear?
It's been brought to the prototype stage,
Okay.
not approved as a reactor yet. So we have to have companies build a prototype and go through the process to get the approval, which they will be glad to do if they think there's a market for it. And there's actually companies existing now that are working on it. The trouble is, nuclear's not being really receptive to the American people, which is part of what we're trying to change. And that's where nuclear ed comes in. We try to educate people a little bit on what really nuclear power is, not what they've heard.
So what is nuclear power really?
Nuclear power is where you take a large atom like uranium. We are uranium. There's a specific type of uranium called uranium-235 that will easily split if a neutron goes into it. Better if it's a slow neutron. So that's how we design the fuel today, is to get that atom to split. And when that atom splits, it creates about 20 million times more energy than when one molecule of coal burns. Coal burns, you get a certain amount of energy.
Say that again, that's mind-blowing.
20 million times more energy from one split of a nuclear. That's why it's very advantageous to use this. It's a very compact, small energy source that releases a lot of energy, 100% clean energy.
There's the key. There's another key. Actually, I know there's more than one, but there's words that the public and people like to listen to. Clean energy. So if we, the people who are the ones that pay for the energy, we're the ones that in the end pay for these facilities,
but it gets better.
And it's clean. So so just explain, sorry, why is it, how can you prove to us it's clean? How would you say it's clean and this is why?
Go to the reactor and look at it. There's not a smokestack. There's nothing coming out of the top of the reactor at all. It just splits these atoms and splits some more and splits some more and splits some more, and then they circulate the water around it, takes the heat away, and you know how then that goes through a steam turbine that produces the electricity we use today. So that works fine. There's another with fast reactors that's not water cooled. So that's one of the good things is you don't have to be by a big water source. They're smaller, they have less energy coming out per reactor, so you can basically go anywhere, and then if you have a remote location, you can use it there as what we call a microgrid. So now you don't have to be attached to the national grid. You can have your own source in your own city, and depending on how big it is, you can serve a number of people.
So you could have multiple facilities, if however you need it, on any terrain, and you're not dependent on the grid.
No.
And at the same time,
you can feed it into the grid if it's necessary, okay?
Right, but you don't
can
have
cut
to
off from
either.
the grid if that's a disadvantage to you.
Right.
So that's the nice flexibility you get for it.
Wow.
Nice thing about this is too, now it can be competitive. Right now, your energy supply is not competitive.
No.
And we all know competitive free enterprise gives us the best deal as consumers. So this allows you to have a lot of different companies with a lot of different ideas with their little microgrids, feeding their their customer area, whatever. There's different reactor types that fit different types of situations. And so we let the free enterprise companies, and like I said, they're already out there. They're already capitalized, privately capitalized. There's $2 billion in capital invested in these next generation reactors. Not all fast reactors, there's the other different types. But here's the deal for New Hampshire. The federal government has no place to put this used fuel, and people are really worried about it for whatever reason.
Where are you going to get rid of it? Where are you going to store it?
Okay?
Okay.
So no solution. Government owns it. It's very expensive for them to keep. Well, by our standards, very expensive. For them, they don't much care about that cost. But they're paying $800 million a year to utilities to store it on their sites, okay? And every time a new one goes in, they pay more. But they collected money from ratepayers for 30 years to pay for this problem, and they have not solved it. And there is no solution in the future. So we're going to kind of try and disrupt this a little bit. We're going to try to pitch this idea that if the governor of New Hampshire decided to say, I will accept used nuclear fuel, it would entirely change the industry. Now they'd have a solution, but let's leverage a fund. $45 billion sits in this fund. So this can be leveraged to jumpstart this business. And we have a sort of a plan where the governor goes in and says, we will accept it if you allow us to be the place that starts this fast reactor recycling process, right? Now, the energy sitting right now on the reactor sites, and there's more coming in all the time, but right now, there's about 250 years equivalent of energy on these sites of all the electricity the United States uses today. That's how much.
So we wouldn't need solar. We wouldn't need electric cars the electric batteries that the solar panels, which they don't have batteries that can hold that amount of energy.
They don't have
so
a mature battery system right now.
We don't have to worry about coal.
Okay, so here's the idea. You want a variety and a mixture of stuff. And this will be a transition that'll take decades. Okay, so we're going to go through 2 generations of people. We're not going to disrupt any businesses right now.
You're just going to slowly introduce it.
It'll come into as the market absorbs it and as the ideas come up. We just don't want it to be eliminated right now. But if the governor asks for it, they can do that all here. And they can leverage that fund that sits there waiting for only that to be used. So any state can do it. Doesn't have to be New Hampshire, but it doesn't have to be Nevada. And you don't need, the reactors can be anywhere because they don't need a big water source. So any state can come in, but the first state that does it is the one that's going to get the benefit from it.
Right.
And we want to show whatever state becomes receptive, hopefully New Hampshire, because I love it here. I've never visited New Hampshire before. I've been here 48 hours. I just love it. So if that becomes a state, giddy up, let's go. But we got to get over some of these political hurdles, and a lot of that takes education.
Correct.
And that's what we're here to try to do. Yep.
Oh, that's terrific.
But you can imagine the business possibility of this thing. It's
endless, and it makes sense because you're taking spent fuel cells, using every drop. It's at exponentially producing more energy.
And if we're trying to get rid of the stuff, We want to make
so you're
more
not
of it.
storing it, you're using it.
We want to use it. We have to store what's left over, and that's a 300-year problem instead of a million-year problem.
Correct.
But if we're trying to work through this system, we want to make more electricity, as much as we can.
Correct.
So we're going to encourage people to use more, and we call it clean energy too cheap to meter. So let the market roll. Let the market compete. If solar and wind can come in and compete with it, that's just fine. If coal and natural gas want to compete with it, that's just fine.
And why
but
not?
We don't even have to mine this. It's sitting there already. 100% domestic supply.
Well, it makes sense to me in New Hampshire. Right now we have a bunch of wind, but if there's too much wind, they have to shut down. If there's not enough wind, then there's not enough wind. We don't have enough solar here just because of the location. So it seems to me this would be a very good region.
This power is on 95% of the time. Solar and wind is on 25%, but less here, like you pointed out, because there's less sun. Okay, and wind, I don't know how much wind there is, but now look at all the acreage you take up with solar and wind. There's a lot of advantages to this. And all I'm saying, if people like solar and wind, that's fine with me, but let it compete in the marketplace. Because they're so subsidized now that they're disrupting the marketplace in a way that would be illegal if an individual is doing it. So let's let the market roll. Let's let the people get the advantage now. Consumers of electricity really need to understand that they do have power. They're the purchasers of this electricity, and we want them to get the best deal. So it's possible to produce this energy in a way that you market cell phones now for long-distance calls. One price a month, all you can use. And we encourage you to use more because we want to burn this stuff up.
Yeah.
So you can imagine electric cars come on. You won't need the batteries in the cars because you can charge them from the road. It's a very inefficient way to charge them, but so who cares if you got unlimited electricity? So you roll down the road and your car just charges as you go. That's all possible. It's the business model. It's got to work within the system. But if you free up the free enterprise part of this, which nuclear is being very disadvantaged right now, this is all possible.
And it also it also frees up the grid, that it's no longer in a stranglehold, that there's more options.
You have a lot of competition in the energy business, which is very good for consumers.
I love it. Yeah. So what is your part in this?
Well, Steve and I used to work back after 9/11. We started a company that was actually looking for signatures of radiation for doing destruction. So after that went by, we talked again and we said, okay, let's get this going. And I said, well, I'm in Virginia. Let's try and do it here in Virginia, because Virginia is actually a very good place for it. We're not only looking here, we're looking in Texas, other places, but Virginia, you have the nuclear Navy. You have BWXT that builds the reactors for the Navy. So you have a lot of community. We've got 2 reactors there that are running, and they just got an extension on the lifespan on one of them for an additional 20 years. So it's a very good place to, have something like this
happen. It's not a hard sell.
No, it's not. But, the governor there wants to just populate with windmills and, solar panels. They have a place right by Fredericksburg, which is about 7,000 acres, I believe, where they're going to be clearing the trees. Okay, a logging company owns it, so that makes sense for them. But they have a 30-year lease on it. The problem is these things, windmills and the solar panels, they only have a lifespan of 20 to 25 years. So if you got a 30-year lease, what happens? 28 years into it, once it's all working, we're declaring bankruptcy. Who's cleaning up that mess?
Right.
Right now with nuclear energy, it's already paid for. It's contained. It's by itself. Very small areas of stuff. And that's, it's in a larger container because it's safe from people, even though the stuff inside is dangerous for hundreds of thousands of years. But once you recycle it, the stuff goes away. And there's rare earth metals in there that's valuable. The old way of looking at this has been 40 years. Way back 40 years ago, we didn't have cell phones. They didn't think about, energy. Once they started, Jimmy Carter and, said we can't recycle this stuff. Okay, let's just bury it then. Let's find the biggest hole in the ground. Let's put it in
there.
But now it makes sense because the federal government's looking for a way to do it. Not one state is going to say, oh, here, bury it here. Because
no.
But if we can recycle it, oh my God, we recycle everything else in the world.
Well, I was just going to say that. Everybody is on the recycling bandwagon. We recycle batteries, recycle this, recycle that. why is nuclear power now? I mean, this is just really, people say, oh, you should have known that, Jocelyn. Well, you know what? Not all of us know everything, and I'll be the first to admit it.
Yeah.
So I am surprised.
Yep.
Number one, I'm surprised that the fuel cells, the energy, whatever's in them, is not used up all the way. That blows my mind.
About the size of my pinky right here at the top. That's about a ton of coal.
Equivalent.
Equivalent to it. That coal ash, when it comes back, is more radioactive than even being close to a nuclear power plant.
Here's another thing that people don't often realize, and have been told the misinformation. Nuclear energy production has the best industrial safety record of any production source for energy. Wind, solar, way better than coal and natural gas. Even way better than hydro, because people have died from dam breaks. But nobody in the United States has been harmed one little bit from nuclear energy.
So why is I mean, it's an pretty obvious question answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So why has this been hidden? Why has it always been fear? Nuclear, oh my word, nuclear is terrible, it's so dangerous. Why is that?
Give you my theory.
Okay, what's your theory?
I think it's very competitive with the existing power sources. And so you get into the pockets of people who are making money off of this. And it's not competitive now, so they can basically set the price anywhere they want it and make all the profits they want. So if you have these microgrids competing with it, they're going to pick the stuff that's most beneficial to their bottom line. And since they have to compete with price for people who are buying it, you're going to see a lot lower prices come on the market. They can bid solar and wind into the market at $0. Now, isn't that suspicious? All these people are coming in, investing in solar and wind, and yet they make a profit bidding it into the market at $0. Okay, so what's that mean to you? Oh boy, free energy. Well, the utilities aren't selling you for free.
No, they're not.
They're getting it for free, but they're not selling it for free.
Right.
So now that means that they're acing out these other energy sources and getting a monopoly with solar and wind. What happens once the monopoly with solar and wind happens? What do you suppose will happen to the price then? Absolutely. So you need to look at this from a free enterprise system perspective, which is what made America great and what gives the best deal for the consumer and the bottom line. So it's just a new way of thinking of things.
It's, it makes total sense to me because we're using up not totally spent fuel cells that everybody's afraid of. You don't need a big water source. You can have small, medium, and large. Pick your size.
And I'll tell
your fancy nuclear luncheon there. You can pick a small, a medium, or large depending on where you are.
Well, even
that makes
small is
total
pretty large.
sense to me. I mean, this
But
is
I'll tell you one thing,
mind-blowing.
the military is now going back into the business. The Navy has been in the business since 1955. Not a single incident. More than 100 reactors are floating around the world. Huge tactical advantage. Finally, the Air Force and the Army are coming back in to realize, well, hey, wait a second. We can have that advantage too. They want to make microgrids out of each base, which makes sense because now they don't have to depend on the national grid, which is, some people are thinking precarious and probably is. It's been old and it's a lot of vulnerabilities to it. And during a battle, they can have a power source at the front of their battle source where they can reduce the amount of convoys they have. And everybody dies in convoys now in the modern battlefield. They don't die in the front as much as they do on the convoys.
Right.
So, plus, now you don't have to pay $300 a gallon for fuel at the front of your battle. Big deal to the military. And these things run for 7 years minimum. Some of them have designs that run for 30 years without being refueled.
What were you going to say, Tom?
And coming back to your question about the fear of this stuff, I mean, look at the Navy, okay? They've been running it for years and years. It's out of sight, out of mind. People don't understand what's going on, and they don't know about the stuff. There's stuff that comes off the old reactors, the old fuel. It gets on a train and ships all the way out to Idaho. Well, people are like, well, not in my backyard. It's happening all the time. It really doesn't matter. I mean, at the same time, you have different big, terrible things that happened, okay? But if you really analyze or educate somebody on it, it's not what they think. First thing, oh, Fukushima, oh my God. Well, yeah, it was a
Chernobyl.
big earthquake and a tsunami that killed 19,000 people. Oh my God. Well, there was another 1,500 or whatever died. Well, guess what? That was from fear of nuclear energy. They evacuated. They should have sheltered in place. They were safe where they were, but they all left the emergency rooms or whatever care they had, and they died. And it's just like nobody died from Fukushima. Okay,
From radiation.
From radiation.
From nuclear.
At the same time, you have other things. It's like, oh my God, well, what happened with 3 Mile Island? A movie came out 2 weeks beforehand, just by coincidence, a big meltdown. So everyone's, what are you doing? Well, nothing happened there. Nobody died. It
Nobody
shut
got
down,
hurt.
no matter what, it shut down properly. Even though it was a meltdown, it was all contained. What
It
happened?
did what it was supposed to do.
Exactly. And over in Russia, they didn't have a containment building in it. And it was actually not an accident. Some high-ranking Russian official said, I want you to disable all the safety devices. Well, yeah, when you take all the safety devices out, something's going to happen.
Yeah.
And it's like a building like this, just a little roof. Boom. Guess what? But people don't understand that there's another 4 reactors that ran for another 14 years. People went to work every day there, and it still was running. There
Same
were
design.
people,
They're not now, but they were. Yeah.
but there were people who died, and they were directly involved in the pile, removing the terrible stuff.
Right.
But out in it's an amusement park almost there now because tourists are coming. And they said, oh, no one's going to live there for hundreds of thousands of years. There's a lot of movies out and whatever. People strive
So
on
it's fear factor.
It's fear
Factor again.
And it's also a lot of times reporters. Oh my God, you're selling commercials. Yes, you're going to make it sensational so people can watch over and over. Oh, and riveted to the thing.
Let me talk a little about fear.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, fear is a very, very big motivator. It motivates people's behavior, but it doesn't motivate the way they think of things. Okay, so it's really kind of immoral to use fear on people who are ignorant of something, and I don't like that approach.
No.
When we talk about risk, we talk about risk benefit. Okay, but with nuclear, all you hear is risk.
Correct.
Nobody talks about the benefit.
Benefits.
Well, we're talking about the benefit, and it's a huge benefit. So people have to decide, but I think they should have all the information to decide. So we get in a car every day knowing that 40,000 people a year will die when they get in a car. But guess what? I drove down with Tom today, and I took the risk because probably good chance I'm going to make it okay. And so that's what most people do. They just don't understand the risk versus the benefit. And that's what you have to frame this thought process in.
Yep. I like the whole recycling. I think that is really good. I think new nuclear. I just kind of like that because it's like new math. And when you're
right.
in school, it's just automatically accepted. And we get this to the children and say, hey, this is efficient. We're not having to get rid of the big blades. We're not having, we need big water sources. I think that's easily understood, easily grasped. I think people can repeat this. I feel I could repeat this and say, no. We've got way better technology. We're 40, 50 years past what you're remembering. And it's going to clean this up. It's going to recycle this. You're going to get 2 million times more energy, for something this big. And it's going to fit in with everything else, not replace it.
That's very good.
That's exactly.
synopsis.
Thank you.
And it has the best industrial safety record of
There we
all
go, I missed
energy
that.
producing things. What they worry about is too expensive. We worry about the waste, and we worry about the safety. Well, you've handled all 3 of those
Because
in
it's
one
already
nice
funded.
little package. Okay,
It's already funded. You're using...
Could be funded. If you ask for it.
Right. It's yeah, if you ask for it. But it's funded.
The money's there. Yeah.
And the cells, the fuel cells are already paid for,
Yep.
and they're being stored. So now the American taxpayer is going to save money from the storage.
You have a domestic stockpile of fuel for 250 years.
And just imagine, just New Hampshire alone, the ratepayers paid into this Congressional Waste Fund $202
Million.
million.
So,
And it's just
30
sitting
years.
there, okay?
so our 202 million investment will come back to us.
It
We
should.
hope.
We hope so.
We greatly hope that that's the case.
Well, we need to get this going. And so we've got like 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes. How would you like to conclude? What would you like to say to the people in New
Okay.
Hampshire? What do we need to do?
People in New Hampshire, my understanding, like I've been here 48 hours, and I love the people I've met, and I love the state, and you guys have a very good attitude and outlook on life, but I'm told that your rates are very high for electricity. I think that you need to look at this in an objective manner because the upside for you is so high, not only from your rates going down, but the fact that you could be the center of energy, clean energy for the rest of the world even, right here in New Hampshire. That's
First in the nation, first in nuclear energy.
It's a high-tech
That's right.
job. It's lots and lots of jobs. It's going to be good. Nobody's going to stop using energy. Energy in the year 2016 was $1 trillion a year business in 2016. That's all energy, cars and heater and all that stuff. So you're on the cusp of a huge, huge energy opportunity. Nobody else is looking at this. So what are you waiting for?
What would you like to say, Tom?
Well, I'm just basically saying that it makes sense. And if you want to understand it, don't just listen to other groups. Do your own research. Try and find out what's going on. It makes sense. I mean, you always hear, oh, it's so expensive for nuclear energy. Well, the truth is, building it, doing the old style stuff, yeah, it was expensive at first. But after it's paid off for 20, 25 years, it is almost the cheapest. It's cheaper than natural gas or anything else, and it can go up to 80 years, maybe 100 years. They've already given grants.
So do you have a website that people can go to get this information again?
Yes, we do. We have, it's Waste to Energy Now. So it's waste and then TO and then energynow.org.
Okay.
And if you want to take email us any questions or anything like that, it's just info@wastetoenergynow.org.
And then any of that information, if anybody wants more information, definitely go to that website. We can reach out to the governor. We can have you two guys come and speak again and
definitely.
explain all about it. In the meanwhile, we're going to put this out for everybody to see and get it all over New Hampshire. I'll have my friends reach out and have their local TV stations listen to you guys. And I want to thank you so much for coming from
I live in Minnesota.
And I'm by Charlottesville, Virginia.
From Virginia to tell us all about this. I appreciate it. I'd love to have you come back, check in with us, and tell us what the updates are and see if we can give a good old-fashioned New Hampshire push to the governor to get a smart form of energy that fits in with everything but takes care of the big problem and uses up those energy cells, fuel energy cells. Thank you guys so much for joining me. This is Chit Chatting with Jocelyn. See you next week.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.